If you're listening to this story, please take a second to like the video. Not because of the algorithm, but because maybe you were once a part of this story. And if you've ever been silent when you should have been subscribed to the channel, not to hear more stories, but to remember that you're not alone. Now, listen carefully. She was told to leave her seat. No one shouted. There was no pushing or shoving. There was no arguing. It was just a short statement, cold, concise, said as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Ma'am, you're in the wrong seat." The man didn't look up when he said that. He was adjusting the entertainment screen in front of him, one hand holding a glass of iced water, the other resting lightly on the leather armrest. Seat 1A. The first seat. The quietest seat. The most expensive seat on a North Sky Airlines flight from Chicago to Seattle on what seemed like an ordinary early weekday afternoon. The woman standing in the aisle didn't react immediately. She looked down at her e-ticket on her phone. Then she looked back at the seat number assigned to her in the cabin. 1A. She wasn't mistaken. She took a very light breath. No one noticed, but it was a familiar breath. The breath of someone who had had to reassure herself too many times in her life. "I think he's sitting in the wrong seat," she said. Her voice was low, not shaky, not high, not challenging, nor apologetic. The man looked up for the first time. His gaze lingered on her flat shoes, her dark, unbranded coat, her worn but well-maintained leather handbag. That glance was fleeting, but long enough to deliver a verdict. He gave a wry smile. "Economy is back there." He gestured toward the back of the compartment where rows of seats began to form behind the curtain. "Perhaps you're mistaken," he continued. "This happens all the time." No one in first class spoke. A few people glanced over, then quickly looked away. It's not that they don't see it. It's that they've become too accustomed to not getting involved. The woman remained standing there. She neither stepped forward nor stepped back. Her name is Dr. Evelyn Brooks. If you saw her at the airport, you wouldn't guess it. She doesn't resemble the typical CEO image seen in the media. No sharp suit, no high heels, no assistants. She looked like a woman who had just finished a long week. Someone who just wanted to sit down, close her eyes, and be quiet for a while. But beneath that silence lies a long history of moments like this. Moments of being scrutinized, being suspected, being asked to move for convenience. Evelyn had learned not to react impulsively. She knew that if she raised her voice, she would be called annoying. If she remained silent, she would wonder if she had just betrayed herself. The man standing in front of her was Thomas Whitaker. He didn't introduce himself, but he didn't need to. Everything about him speaks volumes. Times. The metal watch feels heavy in the hand. Asterisk. The seated position takes up all the space. Asterisk. The certainty that he belongs here. "We're running late for boarding," Thomas said. "Could you ask a flight attendant to help you find another seat?" The way he said help sounded more like a favor than an obligation. Evelyn turned around. A flight attendant was standing nearby. Her name was Lauren Miles. Lauren looked at Evelyn. Then she looked at Thomas. Just 1 second, but enough to make a choice. "Ma'am," Lauren said, her voice soft but firm. "Could you show me the ticket?" Evelyn handed over the phone. Lauren looked. She saw clearly 1A, name Evelyn Brooks. Lauren pursed her lips slightly. "There might be a slight hiccup," she said. "We're trying to get off on time. That saying is so familiar. It hurts. It's always be on time. It's always, don't make a big deal out of it. It's always find another way. Never say, 'Sir, please stand up.'" Evelyn felt a very slight warmth in her chest. Not anger. Rather, the lingering feeling of someone who had endured too much. She thought of her mother, a retired nurse who always advised her, "You don't need to be loud to be respected, but you also mustn't disappear." Evelyn looked up. "I have nowhere else to go," she said. "This is my place." The airplane cabin was a little quieter. Thomas let out a sigh, the sigh of someone who believes they are being bothered. "It's not worth it," he said softly, just loud enough for those around him to hear. Lauren hesitated. Then she said the words Evelyn had heard all too many times in her life. "Ma'am, if you don't cooperate, we will have to ask you to leave the plane." Evelyn stood still. An old question came back to her mind. Should I just walk away like I always do? She looked around. Faces avoided her gaze. People who chose their comfort over what was right. Evelyn bent down and opened her handbag. She didn't take the wallet. She didn't take the documents. She took out another phone. Nobody noticed. Except Thomas. He frowned. "What are you doing?" he asked. Evelyn didn't answer. She only said one sentence very softly, as if speaking to herself. "Give me a minute," and that's the moment things started to deviate from their familiar course. Evelyn Brooks remained standing in the aisle, a second phone nestled comfortably in her hand. She hasn't called. She hasn't texted. She just held on to it. Sometimes, simply knowing you have a choice is enough to help you stand a little stronger. The airplane cabin was still noisy in its familiar way. The sound of people arranging luggage, the sound of children asking their parents how much longer until takeoff, the sound of flight attendants reminding people to fasten their seatbelts. Everything continued as if the previous moment had never existed. As if Evelyn Brooks were just a minor obstacle that needed to be moved aside. She was used to that feeling, not from today, but from a very long time ago. Evelyn was born in southern Ohio in a small town where everyone knew each other by name. Her father was an electrician. Her mother was a night shift nurse. Their house wasn't big, but it was always tidy. There were always books. Her mother believed in one very simple thing. You may not be able to control how people see you, but you can control how you see yourself. Evelyn carried that saying with her throughout her school years. She was a good student, always sat in the front row, always finished her assignments quickly. But he was also the child who was frequently asked, "Are you sure you can do this assignment? Where did you get this idea from? Did anyone help you?" No one asked those questions in a hostile tone. They laughed. They spoke as if joking, and that's why it hurts. Growing up, Evelyn studied engineering. Then she earned a doctorate. Then she worked in offices where she was often the only black woman. She learned an important skill not to react immediately. It wasn't because she was weak. It was because she understood that reacting at the wrong time would allow others to define her instead of herself. Evelyn didn't like talking about her accomplishments. Not out of feigned modesty, but because she was all too familiar with the way people's eyes changed the moment they found out who she was. A look of surprise, a look of suspicion, a look of calculation. She preferred to be treated kindly before people knew her title. Perhaps that's why she dressed simply, moved quietly, and didn't show off, not to hide herself, but to see how the world would treat her without a title. Today's flight should have just been a flight. Evelyn had had a long week, 3 consecutive days of meetings, a presentation that lasted until late at night, a heated debate with the investment board. She chose this flight because it was a direct flight, because seat 1A allowed her to stretch her legs, because she just wanted to sleep. No more, no less. She didn't board the plane to prove anything, not to teach someone a lesson. She just wanted to sit down. But sometimes the world doesn't give you that choice. "Ma'am," Lauren's voice brought Evelyn back into the airplane cabin. The flight attendant stood there holding the list, her face still bearing that professional smile. "We really need your cooperation," Lauren said. "We can find you another place. Another place." Evelyn had heard that phrase more times than she could remember. Another place in the meeting room. Another place in the project. Another place in the story. It's always somewhere else. It's not because she's not good enough. It's because someone else is considered more suitable. Evelyn looked at Lauren. She saw hesitation. She also saw fear. "It's not that I'm afraid of Evelyn. It's that I'm afraid of doing something that goes against the system's expectations." Thomas Whitaker shifted in his chair. He smiled faintly, the smile of someone who believed everything was going in the right direction. "She's making a big deal out of it," he said. "We all want to get home early, right?" Some people nodded. No one said anything. Evelyn realized it. This moment wasn't just between her and Thomas. It was between her and the collective silence. She felt a familiar wave wash over her. Exhaustion. It's not physical exhaustion. It's exhaustion from always having to be the one to decide whether or not I deserve to speak up. A silent dialogue was taking place in Evelyn's mind. If I walk away, I'll get home early. No one will make a fuss. No one will film. But I will remember this moment. Just as I have remembered all the previous times. If I stay, I might be called annoying. I might be asked to get off the plane. I might be looked at uncomfortably. But I'll know that I haven't pushed myself aside. Evelyn closed her eyes for a second. Just a second. Then she opened her eyes. "No," she said. Her voice remained low, still calm. "This is my seat." The airplane cabin seemed to slow down. No one spoke, but everyone heard. Thomas frowned. He wasn't used to being rejected. "You're making things more complicated," he said. "I have an important meeting." Evelyn looked at him. This time her gaze didn't waver. "Me too," she said. The statement is very simple. No details, no explanation. But it made Thomas stop in his tracks. It wasn't because he trusted her. It was because he wasn't sure anymore. Lauren inhaled, then exhaled. "Ma'am," she said more slowly, "if you don't move, we'll have to call flight management." Evelyn nodded. "Just call." The certainty in that voice made Lauren freeze. It's not a challenge. It's the composure of someone prepared for any outcome. Evelyn bent down. She looked at the phone in her hand. She thought of the years of quiet work, the late nights, the difficult decisions. She thought that she had built everything not to prove anything, but to have the power of choice when needed. She hasn't called yet. Not yet. But that moment is closer than she thinks. Up front, the cockpit door opened. A deep voice emanated from within. "What's up?" And for the first time since boarding the plane, Evelyn Brooks felt that the balance was beginning to shift. Quiet, not sudden, but it's irreversible. The voice coming from the cockpit wasn't loud, but it was enough to cut through the tense atmosphere in the cabin. "What's up?" The man who stepped out was Captain Michael Harris. He was in his 50s, broad-shouldered with graying hair and eyes that had flown long enough to distinguish between real incidents and human affairs. Lauren turned toward him more hastily than necessary. "It's just a misunderstanding about seating arrangements, Captain," she said. "We're dealing with it. A misunderstanding?" Evelyn heard the word and realized how familiar it sounded. Injustice, when referred to by a different name, often becomes more acceptable. Captain Harris glanced down the aisle. His gaze settled on Evelyn. Then on Thomas Whitaker, seated comfortably in seat 1A as if it were his default seat. "Ma'am," Captain Harris asked. "What's the problem?" Evelyn lifted her head. She wasn't in a hurry to answer. She had learned that in moments like these, the slower speaker was usually the one in control of the rhythm. "That's my seat," she said. A short statement. No explanation. No defense. Captain Harris nodded, gesturing for Lauren to hand over the list. Lauren handed over the board. Captain Harris looked. 1A, Evelyn Brooks. He frowned. Sir Captain Harris turned to Thomas. "Which seat are you seated in?" Thomas exhaled. An impatient sigh. "I've been upgraded," he said. "I'm a long-time member. Maybe the system hasn't been updated yet." That statement sounds all too familiar. An explanation vague enough to avoid responsibility, yet confident enough to make others hesitant to challenge it. Captain Harris didn't say anything immediately. He was used to situations like this, but what made him stop wasn't the ticket. It's the way Evelyn is standing there. Don't be confused. Don't be afraid. Don't need anyone to defend you. She just stood there as if she knew she was in the right place. "We'll double-check," Captain Harris said. "Please be patient." He returned to the cockpit. Lauren breathed a sigh of relief as if she had just escaped a difficult decision. Thomas leaned back in his chair, shook his head, and gave a wry smile. "It's not worth it," he muttered. Evelyn didn't react. She looked out the window. The sky was a light gray. Luggage carts moved slowly beneath the plane's wings. She recalled an afternoon a long time ago when she was a graduate student. A professor looked at her proposal and said, "This idea is too bold. Are you sure you can handle it?" Evelyn spent years understanding that the question wasn't really about competence. It's about the right to be trusted. "Ma'am," Lauren turned around, her voice softer than before. "We're having a little trouble with the system. If you could, please sit in a different row for now." The sentence wasn't finished yet. "No," Evelyn said. "No raising your voice. No interrupting. Just one word, but it's definitive." Lauren froze. "We just need to get off," Lauren said. "Then we can rearrange things." Evelyn looked straight at her. "If I sit in the wrong seat," Evelyn said slowly, "I'll be sitting in the wrong seat for the entire flight." Lauren didn't answer. Thomas chuckled softly. "You're making things awkward for everyone," he said. "Perhaps you don't understand the procedure." Evelyn turned to him. "I understand perfectly," she said. "I understand what it's like to be asked to give up your seat so things can be easier for someone else." The airplane cabin was quiet. Some passengers began to pay more attention. Not because they wanted to, but because the tension had reached them. "Captain Harris is back. We need a few more minutes," he said. "Please remain seated." He looked at Evelyn, then nodded very slightly. A small nod, but Evelyn understood. That's not consent. It's acknowledgement. Time passes slowly. Nobody likes waiting on a plane. Frustration starts to spread like a weak electric current. Thomas looked at his watch. He frowned. "This is causing me to be late," he said louder. "Is anyone responsible?" A person in the back row sighed. Another person mumbled something indistinct. Evelyn heard everything. She felt the gazes beginning to fall on her. That feeling isn't new, but it's still heavy. A thought flashed through her mind. Am I being selfish? She wondered. It wasn't because she was wrong. It was because she knew that society often taught women like her to put the comfort of others first. Evelyn placed her hand on the strap of the bag. She felt the familiar texture of the leather. She thought about the company she had built, not through fanfare, but through sound decisions, uncompromising standards. She thought about the time she had to say no even though she knew it would slow things down, and then she understood. If she leaves today, it will be more than just a seat. It's a message. Lauren turned around again. This time she didn't smile. Ma'am, she said, if you don't cooperate, we'll have to call airport security. Some people inhaled. The atmosphere became tense. Thomas looked up, his eyes gleaming with something akin to victory. Evelyn looked at Lauren. She wasn't angry, nor was she disappointed. I'm just tired. You can call, Evelyn said. I'll wait. Lauren paused. Not everyone is familiar with the sight of someone cornered and still remaining calm. Captain Harris was standing nearby. He watched the scene and sensed that something was wrong. It's not about the process. It's about the people. He took a step forward. Ma'am, he said to Evelyn, are you sure you want to continue this way? Evelyn looked at him. There was a very brief moment where she considered telling the truth. It's not about the chair that matters. It's about who she is that matters. She could end this with just one sentence, but she didn't say anything. Not yet. Yes, Evelyn said. I'm sure. Captain Harris nodded slowly. Okay, he said. We'll see this through to the end. He returned to the cockpit. The door closed behind him. At that moment, an announcement blared through the loudspeakers. Ladies and gentlemen, we are temporarily pausing the takeoff process to address an operational issue. We ask for your patience. A few murmurs arose. Thomas Quay sang Evelyn. Are you satisfied? He asked. Evelyn looked straight ahead. Not yet, she said. But I'm in the right place. Somewhere ahead, a faint sound could be heard. It wasn't the sound of an engine. That's the sound of the system just switching to standby mode. Nobody in the cabin knew what that meant, but Evelyn knew. And for the first time, she felt a very gentle breeze changing direction. As soon as the announcement ended, the aircraft cabin fell into a strange state. No noise, no chaos. It's just a nagging feeling of unease, like when you know you're going to be late but don't know who to blame. Evelyn Brooks remained standing there, in the middle of the aisle, amidst the stairs. She sensed the change very clearly, not in words but in the attitudes of those around her. Previously they avoided the issue. Now they observe. A man in row 2B tilted his head, looked at Evelyn, then at Thomas Whitaker. An elderly woman on the other side shook her head slightly. It was unclear why. The silence began to carry weight. Thomas Whitaker didn't like that. He wasn't used to being seen as part of the problem. He turned in his chair and gestured to Lauren. Can you explain to everyone how long this will take? He asked. His voice was higher than before, not angry, but it carried the annoyance of someone accustomed to privilege. Lauren looked at him, then at Evelyn, then towards the cockpit. We are awaiting confirmation, she said. Please be patient. Patient. It's easy to say when you're not the one being asked to give up your seat. Thomas chuckled softly. It's unbelievable, he said, loud enough for a few people to hear. Just for a seat. Evelyn heard it. She didn't turn around. She knew that if she went back, she would be drawn into an argument that would only bring exhaustion. But inwardly, an old question resurfaced. Why is everything always reduced to such a small matter? Why are my rights always referred to as insignificant? Lauren walked towards Evelyn. This time her voice was lower. It was no longer formal. Ma'am, Lauren said, I understand how you feel. But you have to understand us. We're under pressure. Evelyn looked at her. Where is the pressure coming from? She asked. Lauren remained silent. It's not that she doesn't know. It's that she knows all too well. Pressure, from time, from processes, from keeping everything smooth. And sometimes it comes from passengers who have louder voices. Thomas Whitaker leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed over his chest. She's holding the whole flight back, he said. Maybe we should call security. A few people around nodded. Not strongly, but enough for Lauren to sense it. Evelyn felt a slight chill run down her spine. It's not because of security concerns. It's because of a sense of familiarity. That feeling you get when you know that if something happens, people will ask you first. What did she do? She recalled another time. A meeting took place many years ago, when one of her decisions was met with strong opposition. A colleague said, "Perhaps Evelyn is being overly sensitive." She remained silent that day, not because she was wrong, but because she knew that if she said anything more, she would be labeled difficult to work with. After the meeting, she wondered, should I remain silent to maintain peace, or to keep others safe? Today, that question has come back to haunt us. "Ma'am," Lauren said, her voice beginning to harden, "if you don't sit down in another chair, we'll have to proceed with the procedure." Evelyn nodded. "I understand," she said. There was no anger. There was no sarcasm. It's simply accepting that things have reached a point of no return. Lauren turned away. Evelyn stayed, alone. The cabin was no longer neutral at this point. Some people began to look at her with impatience. It's not because they hate her. It's because they want things to go back to normal. And in this world, normal often means that the person causing the inconvenience must back down. Thomas Whitaker looked at his watch again. He was breathing heavily. "I'll call the company," he said. "This is ridiculous." He took out his phone. He started dialing a number. Evelyn watched the scene and felt something very clearly. Thomas believed that if he spoke up loud enough, the world would rearrange itself for him. She's different. She learned how to build things without having to shout. The cockpit door opened again. Captain Michael Harris stepped out. This time his face was more serious. "Sir," he said, "we are facing a problem that requires more time to resolve." A soft moan came from behind. "How much longer?" someone asked. Captain Harris didn't answer immediately. He looked at Evelyn. "Then look at Thomas. We don't have a specific time frame yet," he said, "but we won't take off until the issue is clearly resolved." That statement completely changed the atmosphere. It's no longer just a few minutes. It's no longer temporary. Thomas jumped to his feet. "What?" he said. "Are you kidding?" Captain Harris maintained a calm tone. "Sir, please have a seat." Thomas wasn't used to being asked to sit down when he didn't want to. "This is ridiculous," he said loudly. "Just because of one passenger," Sir Captain Harris interrupted, his voice still even. "Please sit down." The airplane cabin was eerily silent. Evelyn looked at Captain Harris. For the first time, she saw something in his eyes that resembled respect. Not for power, but for perseverance. Lauren turned around, accompanied by a man in a gray suit. His name tag read, Operations Supervisor. He looked at Evelyn. "Ma'am," he said, "we need to speak with you." Evelyn nodded. She didn't ask for the reason. She already knew. When someone invites you to a private conversation, it's usually to get you to step aside in silence. She followed them to the front of the compartment. Thomas watched. His eyes gleamed with certainty that everything would eventually return to normal. Evelyn stood before the operations supervisor. "We understand you have a ticket for seat 1A, he said. "But in situations like this, we need your cooperation." "How would we cooperate?" Evelyn asked. "Sit in a different seat," he replied. "We'll compensate you." Evelyn looked at him. Compensation for what she asked. "For being asked to leave my place." The man remained silent. It's not that he doesn't have the answer. It's that he doesn't want to tell the truth. The truth is, this system has always wanted someone like Evelyn to be flexible. Evelyn nodded slowly. "I don't need compensation," she said. "I need to be treated fairly." That statement wasn't loud. It wasn't sharp. But it touched on a point none of them wanted to confront. Captain Harris was standing not far away. He heard it. And in that moment, he understood that this was no longer a matter of seating. It's a matter of deciding who should take responsibility to keep things smooth. Evelyn looked back into the airplane cabin. The gazes, the anticipation. She knew that the next thing she did would change everything. And somewhere beneath the roar of the engine waiting to start, a larger chain of decisions is beginning to take shape. Evelyn Brooks stood before the operations supervisor, her hand resting lightly on the strap of her handbag. She neither bowed her head nor puffed out her chest. Just stand straight, as if that were the most natural posture in the world. The man in the gray suit looked at her, then glanced quickly toward the first-class compartment. He lowered his voice. "Ma'am," he said, "we don't want to make a big deal out of it." Evelyn nodded. "Me too," she replied. The two sentences are the same, but they carry two completely different meanings. For them, not making a big deal out of it means making the problem disappear. For Evelyn, it meant not betraying herself. The rear cabin remained quiet, but it was no longer neutral. The prolonged wait led people to start looking for someone to vent their frustrations on. Several eyes turned toward Evelyn, no longer just curious but mixed with displeasure. Evelyn sensed it. She didn't need to look. She was used to reading the atmosphere. She thought back to an evening a long time ago. When she was a young engineer, she was invited to join a large project team. During the first meeting, she made an important remark. The room fell silent. A few minutes later, a male colleague repeated the same idea. Everyone nodded. After the meeting, someone pulled her aside and said, "Don't worry about that. What matters is how the idea is used." Evelyn smiled. She nodded. But on the way home, she cried in the car. It wasn't because of the idea. It was because of the feeling of being erased from my own story. "Ma'am," the operations supervisor continued, "we can issue vouchers, upgrade your trip, or even give you a refund. Those offers sounded all too familiar. It is always about material compensation for immeasurable harm." Evelyn looked at him. "I didn't buy the ticket to get a refund," she said. "I bought the ticket to get the right seat. Monitor exhalation function." "You're making things more difficult than necessary," he said. Evelyn didn't answer immediately. She looked down at her shoes. They weren't new, but they were clean. She recalled this morning when she was tying her shoelaces in her hotel room. She had thought, "I just need to get through today. I just need to go home." She never thought that a seat would become a place where she had to defend her own values. In the front seat, Thomas Whitaker was talking on the phone. "Yes, I'm on a plane," he said. "There's been a minor incident. No, it's not my fault." His voice was confident, as if the outcome was already predetermined. Evelyn heard it, and a strange feeling welled up inside her. Not anger, but clarity. She suddenly realized that Thomas wasn't really interested in seat 1A. What he cared about was that no one would dare ask him to leave. And if Evelyn walks away today, it will confirm that belief. Lauren stood nearby, clutching the list tightly in her hand. She said nothing, but her eyes kept darting between Evelyn and the operations supervisor. Lauren isn't a bad person. Evelyn knows that. Lauren is just someone trying to survive in a system that rewards mediocrity, but not fairness. Evelyn looked at Lauren. "Do you believe me?" Evelyn asked softly. Lauren froze. "News? What news?" she asked. "I believe this is my seat," Evelyn said. Lauren swallowed. Then she nodded very slightly. "I saw the ticket," she said. But. Evelyn smiled. Not bitterly, not sarcastically. "Thank you," Evelyn said. "That's enough." Lauren turned away, her eyes avoiding his gaze. The operations supervisor watches the clock. "Ma'am," he said, "if you don't move within the next few minutes, we will have to report you as an uncooperative passenger." The statement was uttered very smoothly. It was perfectly in line with the procedure. But for Evelyn, it carried a different weight. She knew that when people label you, everything you say afterward is viewed through that lens. Not cooperative. One word is enough to make you a problem. Evelyn inhaled, exhaled. She felt her heart beating faster, not fast, but distinctly. One final question arose in her mind. What do I fear more, being called difficult, or having to live with the feeling that I've abandoned myself? The answer came very quickly. Evelyn opened her handbag. This time she didn't hesitate. She took out her second phone, not a flashy phone, no phone case, no ringtones. It's just a simple device, but it's kept carefully. The operations supervisor frowned. "What are you doing?" he asked. Evelyn looked at him. "I'm doing something I've avoided doing for years," she said. "I'm speaking up when it's necessary." She turned away slightly, avoiding the gaze of the other passengers. She dialed a familiar number. The name wasn't saved. The call was answered immediately. Evelyn. A deep male voice called out. "It's me," she said. Her voice was even, but there was something different about it. "I'm on North Sky 417, she said. "There's a problem that needs checking." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. "What's the problem?" the voice asked. Evelyn looked toward seat 1A. She looked at Thomas. She looked at Lauren. She looked at Captain Harris, standing near the cockpit. "One issue is who is required to move," she said. "And why?" She paused. "I need the system to be put on hold," she continued, "until this issue is properly resolved." The operations supervisor kept a close eye on things. "Ma'am," he began. Evelyn raised her hand. Not high, not sharply. It was just a gesture, asking for time. On the other end of the line, a deep male voice answered. "Understood," he said. "Please confirm it for me." Evelyn spoke a short string of characters. No one around understood. But Captain Harris does. He looked at Evelyn. His expression changed. It's not a surprise. It's a realization. Okay, the voice said. We'll activate the process. Evelyn hung up the phone. She stood still. There was no thunder. There were no lights going out. Not yet. But somewhere beneath the aircraft floor, a series of signals had begun to run. Evelyn felt her heart slow down. It wasn't because the stress had subsided. It was because she had made a decision. She didn't know what would happen next. She only knew one thing. This time, she didn't walk away. Nothing happened immediately. That was the first thing that confused everyone. No lights went out. No sirens sounded. No engine screeching or sputtering. It's just a slowdown that's hard to put a name to. Evelyn Brooks stood still in the aisle. Her phone was back in her pocket. Her hands hung loosely at her sides as if she had just finished a very ordinary task. But Captain Michael Harris didn't find it normal. He strode quickly toward the cockpit. The door closed behind him, not forcefully but decisively. Lauren stood there watching with a bewildered expression. The operations supervisor turned to Evelyn. "Ma'am," he said, his voice no longer as steady as before. "Who were you just calling?" Evelyn looked at him. "It's for an acquaintance," she replied. "Someone who really hates things that don't work properly." That answer wasn't challenging, but it left the other person unsure how to react. Inside the cabin, the passengers began to realize that something was wrong. It's not because there's a new announcement. It's because of the prolonged silence. A person in row 3C leaned over to the person sitting next to them. "How much longer do we have to wait?" he whispered. The other person shook their head. Thomas Whitaker looked at his watch. The minute hand had passed the mark he had predicted. He frowned, a feeling of unease beginning to overshadow his initial confidence. "This is ridiculous," he said loudly. "You can't just let one passenger get away with this." He stopped. It wasn't because it was interrupted. It was because the entertainment system in front of him had just frozen. The screen is frozen. It's unresponsive. Thomas pressed the button. Nothing happened. He frowned even more deeply. At the front of the compartment, Lauren realized the same thing. The small control panel in her hand was displaying a strange message. It's not a serious error, just a short line of text. Standby mode active. She had never seen this line during boarding. Lauren looked around, then walked quickly toward the cockpit. The operations supervisor followed his expression, becoming tense. Evelyn watched them go. She didn't smile. She didn't sigh in relief. She just felt another familiar feeling rising within her. The feeling you get when you know you've just touched a very sensitive wire. In the cockpit, Captain Harris was staring intently at the screen. The display system shows no errors. There are no red warnings. But some items have been moved to a pending state. "What the hell is going on?" the co-pilot sitting next to him muttered. Captain Harris did not respond immediately. He had flown long enough to understand that the most dangerous problems weren't always the loudest. "Check the data source," he said. "Something has just been locked." The co-pilot typed rapidly on the control panel. "We haven't given any orders," he said. "But the system is waiting for external confirmation." Captain Harris narrowed his eyes. "Where did you get the confirmation from?" The co-pilot looked up. "From the supplier." A brief silence passed. Captain Harris thought of the woman standing outside, the way she speaks, the way she waits, and the look in her eyes when she hung up the phone. Outside the cabin, Thomas Whitaker began to stand up again. "Flight attendant," he called. "My monitor isn't working." Lauren turned around, her professional smile thinner than before. "Please wait a moment," she said. "We're checking." "Check what Thomas asked." "We're late," another person spoke up. "Yes," a woman's voice said from the back row. "What's going on?" The frustration began to spread, no longer focused on Evelyn. Evelyn realized that she felt a little relieved, then, immediately, a little worried. "Have I gone too far? Will anyone be affected by my decision?" She remembered the question that had haunted her for years. Am I causing trouble for other people? She took a deep breath, reminding herself of what she knew was true. Operational supervision is back. This time, he wasn't standing before Evelyn in the position of a decision-maker. He stood there like someone trying to understand what was happening. "Ma'am," he said more slowly, "can you tell me what you just activated?" Evelyn looked at him. "I didn't activate anything," she said. "I just requested a verification process." "Check what he asked." "Investigate why in such a clear situation," Evelyn said the person with the valid ticket was the only one asked to give up their seat. That question isn't directed at an individual. It's directed at how the system operates. The operations supervisor was unable to respond. The announcement was made over the loudspeaker. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to inform you that the flight will be further delayed due to technical reasons. Please remain seated. A collective sigh of relief rang out. Thomas Quay sang Evelyn. "Are you satisfied?" he asked. This time his voice was no longer as confident as it could be. Evelyn looked at him. "I'm not looking for satisfaction," she said. "I'm looking for clarity." Thomas gave a wry smile. "Who do you think you are?" He stopped. It wasn't because of Evelyn. It was because of the stares of the people around us. For the first time, some people didn't see Evelyn as a source of trouble. They looked at Thomas, not with anger, but with a silent question. Why is he still sitting there? Lauren stood near Evelyn. She lowered her voice. "Ma'am," she said, "I don't know who you are, but something is happening." Evelyn nodded. "I know," she said. Lauren looked at her for another second. Then he said, "Thank you for not raising your voice." Evelyn was a little surprised. "Raising your voice doesn't always help," she replied. Lauren smiled very slightly. It was her first smile, not a professional one. In the cockpit, Captain Harris received a message, not from the usual operations center, but from a higher point of contact. The content is concise. Aircraft pending vendor compliance review. Do not proceed. Captain Harris read it again. Then he stood up. "We're not going anywhere," he told the co-pilot, "until this is clear." He opened the cockpit door. The airplane cabin fell silent as he stepped out. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Harris said, "this flight is currently on mandatory hold. We cannot proceed until a confirmation process is complete." Thomas jumped to his feet. "You can't do that," he said. Just because Captain Harris looked directly at him. "Sir," he said, "this matter is no longer in my hands." He turned to Evelyn. There was no fear in his eyes. There was no anger. There was only one silent question. Evelyn understood. And for the first time since boarding the plane, she felt she wasn't alone anymore. Somewhere beneath layers of metal and wire, the system awaits a decision. And the entire aircraft cabin, though its name was unknown, was detained simply for a very simple question: who is the one who has to give up their seat? The airplane cabin was silent in a way that was completely different from before. No more blatant frustration. No more loud sighs. No more complaints lingering in the air. Instead, there was a tense wait. It was as if everyone sensed that this was no longer a minor incident. Captain Michael Harris stands at the front of the cabin, hands in front of him, back straight. He already said that. This is no longer in my hands. For a captain, that's no easy statement. That's the line between cockpit authority and a higher level of power. Thomas Whitaker was the first to break the silence. "What do you mean by that?" he asked, his voice having lost its initial confidence. "If it's not in your hands, then whose hands is it?" Captain Harris looked at him. Not annoyed, no argument. It's just the gaze of someone who's flown too long to recognize when a flight has gone off track. "Sir," Captain Harris said slowly, "this flight is currently being held up by a verification process from the system provider." "The supplier," Thomas repeated. "What do you mean?" Captain Harris did not respond immediately. He looked toward Evelyn Brooks. Just 1 second. But Evelyn understood. He was asking her a question without opening his mouth. Evelyn stood still. She sensed the gazes of everyone in the cabin gradually shifting. Nobody knew exactly what was happening, but they knew one thing: this woman is involved. Evelyn felt her heart beating more distinctly. Not fast, not erratic. It's just the heartbeat of someone standing before a moment she's been preparing for her entire career without even realizing it. Perhaps this is that moment. The operations supervisor stepped forward. This time he didn't stand directly in front of Evelyn. He stood slightly to one side, a very small gesture, but it carries a lot of meaning. "Captain," he said, "the operations center is requesting additional verification codes." Captain Harris returned to the cockpit. Just a few minutes later he came back out. His face had changed. "Don't panic. Don't be afraid, but it's serious. We just received notification," he said. "This aircraft is in vendor compliance hold." Those 3 words fell into the airplane's cabin like an invisible weight. None of the passengers understood exactly what it meant. But everyone understands one thing: the flight isn't going anywhere. "No way," Thomas chuckled, a short, dry laugh. Just because of a seating dispute, Captain Harris looked directly at him. "Sir," he said, "we are not being held because of seating arrangements." "So why?" Thomas asked sharply. Captain Harris inhaled. "Due to a suspicion that the system was used improperly." The air is freezing. A few passengers started sitting up straight. One person took out their phone, not filming, just holding it. Evelyn perceived the change as a slow wave. She was used to being ignored, but at this moment all eyes were on her, not out of curiosity, not out of suspicion. Rather, it's about finding the answer. Lauren stood close to Evelyn. Her voice trembled slightly. "Ma'am," she whispered, this concerns you, doesn't it?" Evelyn looked at Lauren. She didn't answer immediately. She thought about all the time she had hidden her true self just to have peace. There were times when she let others define who she was. But this moment is different, not for power, but because the truth has finally come to light. "Yes," Evelyn said softly. "It's related," Lauren swallowed. "Who are you?" Lauren asked, hesitant to finish the sentence. Evelyn smiled very slightly. "I was the one who requested the system to stop for inspection." Lauren's eyes widened, not because of fear, but because I'm beginning to understand. "Thomas Whitaker has run out of patience." He stepped out into the hallway. He pointed toward Evelyn. "Is it you?" he said loudly. "Did you do this?" Some people were startled. Captain Harris took a step forward. "Sir, please maintain order." "No," Thomas said. "I want to know who you think you are to be able to stop an entire flight." That question had been asked many times in Evelyn's life, not with words, but with their eyes. This time, she didn't shy away. She looked directly at Thomas. "I am the passenger who bought this seat," she said, "and I am someone who will not accept being asked to leave just because it is more convenient for someone else." Thomas laughed even louder. "That's ridiculous," he said. "Do you think the airline will listen to you?" Evelyn didn't answer. It wasn't because she didn't have the answer. It was because she knew she didn't need to say anything more. A faint sound emanated from the cockpit. Not an alarm, not a bell. It's a system confirmation sound. Captain Harris received an internal call. He answered. He nodded. Then he hung up. He turned towards the cabin. "Sir," he said, "we have just received instructions from the highest level of North Sky Management." A moment of silence. "This flight will remain delayed until a senior operations representative is on board the aircraft." A few murmurs arose. "How long?" someone asked. Captain Harris answered directly. "I do not know." Thomas turned to supervise the operations. "How could you let this happen?" he said. "Just because of one passenger." The operations supervisor didn't look at Thomas. He looked at Evelyn. The commanding gaze was gone. Instead, it was a look of assessment. "Ma'am," he said, "we need to confirm your identity." Evelyn nodded. "Of course," she said. She took a card out of her handbag. Not flashy, not ostentatious. It's just a business identification card. Visual operational monitoring. Then look back, then look again. His skin turned pale. Lauren glanced over, trying to catch a glimpse of the name. Evelyn Brooks, title founder and chief executive officer. Company name Orex Systems. Lauren didn't fully understand the meaning of the name, but the operations supervisor did. That's very clear. "Captain," he said, his voice much lower, "we need to call for reinforcements." Captain Harris nodded. Thomas stood there speechless. "Orex," he repeated. "Impossible." He looked at Evelyn as if he were seeing her for the first time in a real sense. "You're lying," he said. "You couldn't possibly be," Evelyn interrupted, not raising her voice. "I didn't say anything," she said. "I just handed over the card." Thomas shook his head. "This is absurd," he muttered. But deep down, something began to crumble. Captain Harris stood up straight. "Sir," he said, "please remain seated. We are dealing with a systemic issue." System. The word sounded very different then than it does now. No longer abstract. No longer distant. It's right there in the middle of the airplane cabin. Evelyn Brooks stood there. No more words were spoken. No explanations. No excuses. She felt a strange stillness within herself. It's not because she won, but because she didn't leave. Somewhere the gears of a larger system are being forced to stop because of a question no one wanted to answer from the beginning. And this moment is just the beginning. There was no shouting. There was no chaos. It's just an absolute halt. Captain Michael Harris had just finished saying that, and the entire cabin understood what he meant, even though no one really grasped the details. This flight will remain delayed until a senior representative from the airline's operations department arrives. Not possibly. Not temporarily. Yes, it will. At that moment, something very fragile inside the compartment broke. It's not anger. It's the illusion of control. A man, In row 4, A was breathing heavily. A woman behind him was muttering something about the meeting. A young man pulled out his phone and started recording. Thomas Whitaker stood still in the middle of the walkway. No talking, no smiling. He just stood there, as if someone had just pulled the ground away from his feet. RX systems, he repeated, his voice much lower. Impossible. Evelyn Brooks didn't look at him. She looked straight ahead, towards the cockpit. She knew from the moment that name was spoken this was no longer just a conversation between her and Thomas. It has become a story about a system and its own biases. The operations supervisor strode quickly forward to the front of the compartment. He spoke softly to Captain Harris. Lauren stood close to Evelyn, her hands trembling slightly. "Ma'am," she whispered, I've never seen anything like this before." Evelyn Quay sang. "You did nothing wrong," Evelyn said. "You're just in a situation where the system wasn't designed to handle things fairly." Lauren swallowed. "Did you know this would happen?" Lauren asked. Evelyn shook her head. "No," she said truthfully. "I just know I can't walk away again." The airplane door opened. It wasn't for passengers to disembark. Instead, it was for a group of people to board. 3 people. A middle-aged man in a black suit, no name tag, no smile. A woman is wearing headphones and holding a tablet. And the last person, wearing a North Sky Airlines jacket, had a senior management badge on their chest. The airplane cabin was eerily silent. Captain Harris stepped forward. "Sir," he said to the man in the black suit, "we are currently in vendor compliance hold." The man nodded. "We know," he said. "We're here for that." His gaze swept across the compartment. Then it stopped at Evelyn. "Dr. Brooks," he said, "thank you for waiting." Thomas Whitaker's jaw dropped. It wasn't because he was angry. It was because for the first time in his life he realized he wasn't the most important person in the room. The North Sky manager turned to Thomas. "Sir," she said, "please return to your seat." Thomas opened his mouth. "Please sit down," she repeated, not raising her voice, not being harsh. But there was no choice. Thomas looked around. No one looked at him with approval. He sat down. The man in the black suit turned back towards Evelyn. "We have received your request," he said, "and we need to confirm a few points." Evelyn nodded. "Of course," she said. "Did you confirm," he continued, "that you activated a compliance check procedure for this flight?" "I asked for a check," Evelyn said. "I didn't activate anything." The man smiled very slightly. "Yes," he said. "That's exactly what she has the right to do." Thomas chuckled a forced laugh. "Excuse me," he said loudly, "but this is ridiculous. Just for a seat." The man turned to Thomas. "Sir," he said, "this isn't about seating arrangements." "So what is it about?" Thomas asked. The man stared at him for a long time. "Regarding," he said slowly, "who is automatically entitled and who must prove their worthiness. The air is freezing." The woman holding a tablet walked up. "We reviewed the system logs," she said, "and found a series of decisions that didn't conform to the seat dispute resolution process." She glanced at Lauren, then supervised the operation. In that sequence, she continued, there was only one passenger who was repeatedly asked to move despite having a valid ticket. Lauren bowed his head. The operations supervisor didn't say anything. Evelyn looked at them. She didn't feel victorious. She just felt that something very old was being called by its proper name. The North Sky manager turned to Evelyn. "Dr. Brooks," she said, "we apologize for the experience you had." Evelyn nodded. "Thank you," she said, "but I'm not here to receive apologies." She was a little surprised. "So what do you want?" she asked. Evelyn thought for a second. "I want," she said, "for people to understand that small decisions like these are never small to those affected." She nodded. "We will review the process," she said. "No," Evelyn said. Her voice was still soft, but clear. "I want you to review your training methods." The whole group fell silent. "Because," Evelyn continued, "the system isn't biased. Humans are." Thomas Whitaker jumped up. "She can't," he began. The man in the black suit turned to him. "Sir," he said, "you will be leaving this flight." Thomas stood still. What he said. "That's impossible. He didn't buy this seat," the man said, "and he refused to leave when asked." "This is humiliating," Thomas said. "No," Evelyn said, looking him directly in the eye for the first time. "This is the consequence." There was no applause in the airplane cabin. No cheering. Just stay silent. Thomas packed his things. No one helped. No one said anything. As he stepped off the plane, something very heavy left with him. The North Sky manager returned to Evelyn. "Seat 1A is yours now," she said. Evelyn looked at the chair. She shook her head. "I don't need it anymore," she said. "Give it to someone else." She froze. Evelyn looked around. Her eyes stopped at a young woman sitting in the third row, clutching her ticket tightly in her hand. Miss Evelyn said softly, "Would you like to switch seats?" The woman's eyes widened. Then she nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. Evelyn turned back to Captain Harris. "Captain," she said, "when can the flight depart?" Captain Harris smiled. "As soon as we're allowed," he said, "and this time, everything will be right." Evelyn nodded. She returned to her makeshift seat. Not 1A, just an empty seat. She sat down, fastened her seatbelt. Her heart slowed down. "It's not because I'm tired. It's because a circle has closed. The plane hasn't taken off yet." But for Evelyn Brooks, this trip changed everything. The plane took off nearly 2 hours later than scheduled. But once the plane's wheels left the runway, no one in the cabin remembered how much of a hurry they had been in just moments before. The tension subsided, leaving a very strange void. A gap in perception. Evelyn Brooks sat quietly in her seat. Not 1A. Just a window seat where she could watch the clouds drift slowly outside. She didn't sleep. She didn't work either. She just looked. It wasn't because she was tired. It was because her mind was far away from this airplane cabin. Lauren walked past, pushing her water cart more slowly than usual. She stopped next to Evelyn. "Ma'am," she whispered, "would you like something to drink?" Evelyn smiled. "Filtered water will do," she said. Lauren offered the bottle of water. Then she hesitated. "You know, Lauren said I've worked here for almost 8 years. Evelyn looked at her. "And today," Lauren continued, "is the first time I've seen things not go the way they usually do." Evelyn nodded. "Sometimes," she said, "it just takes one person not to walk away." Lauren smiled very softly. Not the smile of a flight attendant, but the smile of a human being. In the back seat, a young man was scrolling through his phone. He didn't film the incident, but he recorded the audio, and as soon as the plane got Wi-Fi, he uploaded it online. No lengthy comments. Just a short one. The flight was delayed because a woman refused to give up the seat she had paid for. Within 10 minutes, the post was shared hundreds of times. It's not because it's sensational, it's because everyone understands that feeling. Thomas Whitaker was not on the plane. He sat in the airport waiting area, phone in hand, staring at the screen but seeing nothing. Notifications are coming in constantly. It wasn't a greeting. It was a text message. "I just saw your name on Twitter." "What's going on? Are you okay?" Thomas typed a reply. Deleted it, typed it again, deleted it again. He didn't know what to say. How can you explain that everything collapsed simply because he refused to get back on his feet? An hour after the plane took off, the name Oryx Systems began appearing on technology forums. It's not because of a new product. It's because of a very simple question. Is Oryx the company behind North Sky's operating system? Those in the industry know the answer. Others began to investigate. Short articles appeared. No sensational headlines, just recounting the events. A black CEO, a seat, a delayed flight. Nobody called it a scandal. They called it a moment. Evelyn Brooks didn't know that. She was sitting on the plane, listening to the steady hum of the engines. She recalled that morning when she almost chose the easy way out. Walk. Be silent. Go home. She wondered what would happen if I did that. The answer is very clear. Nothing happened. And that's the real problem. Captain Michael Harris stepped out of the cockpit and walked along the cabin. As he approached Evelyn, he stopped. "Dr. Brooks," he said, "I want to tell you this." Evelyn Quay sang. "I've been flying for over 30 years, he said. "I've seen all kinds of passengers, all kinds of situations." He paused. "But today," he continued, "is the first time I've seen a flight delayed not because of a technical fault, but because of an ethical question." Evelyn smiled softly. "Thank you," she said. "And thank you for not avoiding it." Captain Harris nodded. "We're often taught to keep things running smoothly," he said. "But perhaps running smoothly isn't always the right thing to do." As the plane flew through thick clouds, the light outside changed color. White, then gray, then pale blue. Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about the people who would watch the video, the people who would argue. She knew some people would say she was too tough, too sensitive, making too much of a fuss. She had heard those words her whole life. But she also knew that somewhere, someone would watch that video and think, "I'm not crazy. I'm not being unreasonable. I just want to be treated fairly. And that's enough. Elsewhere, in a small conference room at North Sky Airlines, a call was underway. No press, no cameras, just questions. How did we handle it? Why was only one passenger asked to move? Was there a problem with our training? No one answered quickly. And for the first time, that wasn't considered an inconvenience. Thomas Whitaker received an email. Short title, "We need to discuss this urgently." From a long-standing partner. The content is not long. We've just reviewed some information. We need to clarify things before continuing our collaboration. Thomas stared intently at the screen. He felt something he had never felt in his entire career. Don't be angry. Don't be afraid. Instead, it was being looked at. The plane descended. Captain Harris announced that they were preparing to land. Evelyn opened her eyes. She looked out one last time. The city of Seattle appeared through a thin layer of clouds. She doesn't know what will happen after today. She doesn't aspire to be an icon. She doesn't need to be praised. She only knew one very simple thing. She stayed today, and that forced the entire system to stop and reevaluate itself. The plane landed on a pale gray afternoon. No rain, no sunshine. It's a very familiar Seattle weather pattern where the sky isn't unpleasant, but also doesn't make you forget it's always there. Evelyn Brooks remained seated until the seatbelt sign went off. She wasn't in a hurry to stand up. She was never the one to push her way to the front. Not because she lacked confidence, but because she didn't need to prove she was more important than anyone else. The airplane cabin gradually began to move. Passengers stood up, retrieved their luggage, and exchanged familiar greetings, finally arrived. It's later than expected. But this time, amidst those words, there was something different. No one mentioned the incident. No one talked about it loudly. But many eyes glanced over Evelyn with a silent acknowledgement. Not admiration. Not curiosity. Instead, it means I saw it. Lauren stood near the exit. When Evelyn approached, Lauren took a deep breath. "Dr. Brooks," she said, no longer calling him ma'am. Evelyn stopped. "Thank you," Lauren said. "Not because of what just happened." Evelyn waited. "Because of the way she did it," Lauren continued. "She didn't embarrass anyone, but she didn't disappear either." Evelyn smiled. "You'll do well," Evelyn said. "Just remember one thing." Lauren looked up. "Don't be quick to believe the story told by the loudest speaker." Lauren nodded. No tears fell from her eyes, but her gaze was different. Outside the airport, Evelyn took a deep breath of the cool air. A black car was waiting. The driver got out and opened the rear door. "Welcome to Seattle, Dr. Brooks." Evelyn nodded. She got into the car. When the doors closed, the noisy sounds of the airport were left behind. Silence descended. She leaned her head back against the chair, closed her eyes. And for the first time that day, she allowed herself to feel tired. It wasn't physical exhaustion. It was the exhaustion of someone who had stood their ground for a long time. The phone vibrated slightly. A message. From Marcus Reed, chairman of the board of Aurex Systems. He has worked with Evelyn since the early days. "We just saw what's going on," the message read. "Are you okay?" Evelyn stared at the screen for a while. Then he replied, "I'm fine, but we need to talk." 3 dots appeared. Then they disappeared. "We're waiting," Marcus replied. Elsewhere in the city, Thomas Whitaker sat in a small office. It wasn't his main office, just a temporary meeting room. He looked out the window. The familiar building suddenly seemed strange. His phone was ringing incessantly on the table. A call from a lawyer, an email from a business partner, a text message from an acquaintance. No one asked him if he was tired. They asked, "What happened? What did you do? Is that true?" Thomas didn't answer immediately. He opened the video that was going viral, not the audio recording, but a different clip. The camera angle is from the back of the compartment. He's standing in the aisle. His voice is clear. "You're making things awkward." Thomas turned off the screen. He felt a surge of heat, not from being slandered, but from hearing himself speak again. He had never heard his own voice in moments like these. That evening, Evelyn walked into a small meeting room. There were no big signs, no flowers. It was just a room with a long table and a few chairs. Marcus Reed was sitting there. 2 other council members were beside him. "You don't need to come," Marcus said. "We can handle it." Evelyn sat down. "I need to come," she said, "because this doesn't just concern me." Marcus looked at her. "We know," he said, "and we want to hear what you want to do next." Evelyn didn't answer immediately. She looked down at the table. The wooden surface was smooth. No scratches. She thought of something. If she remains silent from now on, everything will be fine. Oryx will not be affected. Her reputation will not be tarnished. But the story will be told in someone else's way, and she was quite used to it. I don't want Oryx to issue an offensive statement, Evelyn said. No lawsuits, no personal attacks. One council member was surprised. Are you sure? He asked. This is an opportunity to— No, Evelyn said. This is an opportunity to reset the standards. The room was silent. I want us, Evelyn continued to propose to North Sky, an independent review program, not just of the systems, but of the people. Marcus nodded slowly, and he asked, And I want us to fund a scholarship fund, Evelyn said. Not under my name. No media coverage needed. For whom someone asked. Evelyn looked up. This is for those who are always being asked to give up their seats, she said. In the meeting room, in the classroom, in life. No one objected. It wasn't because they were convinced. It was because they understood this wasn't an emotional decision. This is a long-term strategy. At North Sky Airlines, an internal email was sent out. Not public, not flashy, just one title. Reevaluate the passenger dispute resolution process. Below is a list of questions. There was no question asking how to avoid trouble. The only question remains, whom have we unknowingly placed this burden on? Lauren read that email in the flight attendant's break room. She read slowly. Then she read it again. She remembered Evelyn's gaze when she said, I can't walk this far again. Lauren closed her laptop. She exhaled. For the first time in years, she felt like she was more than just a cog in the chain. Night falls. Evelyn stood by the hotel room window. The city of Seattle stretched out below. Yellow lights, white lights. She picked up her phone. A new message. From some strange number. Thank you, ma'am. I didn't stay silent in my meeting today. Evelyn read it. She didn't reply immediately. She put the phone down. She didn't know who that person was. It didn't matter. She only knew that the story had gone further than she had imagined. And sometimes the most powerful thing isn't winning against someone. Rather, it's about showing others that they are not alone. Mornings in Seattle arrive very slowly. It's not because the clock is wrong. It's because the light in this city always seems to be hesitating whether or not to appear. Evelyn Brooks woke up while it was still gray. She sat up in bed, not in a hurry to reach for her phone. For many years, the first thing she did each morning was check her email. But today, she allowed herself to sit there for just a few minutes. Breathe. Listen. The city outside was quiet. No car horns. No loud noises. She thought about yesterday's flight. Not the climactic moment, but the small details. Lauren's gaze, Captain Harris's nod, the silence as Thomas left. Those moments don't appear online, but they are the most authentic part. Elsewhere, Lauren Miles was standing in the North Sky Airlines flight attendant break room. She arrived earlier than usual, not because of her shift, but because she couldn't sleep. On the table was a cup of cold coffee. Next to it was an open laptop. The company's internal emails are still displayed on the screen. Reevaluate the passenger dispute resolution process. Lauren read that email a third time. She recalled her first training session. The instructor had said, Your job is to keep the cabin running smoothly. Fluent. At the time, Lauren thought it was the right thing to do, but now she began to wonder, for whom is it smooth? She opened a new document. Not a report, not an official email, just a personal note. Lauren types slowly. These are things I did because I thought it was the process. She paused. Then she continued. The people I asked to give up their seats weren't really listening. Her fingers trembled slightly, but she didn't stop. This isn't for anyone in particular. This is about being honest with myself. At lunchtime, Evelyn walked into the Oryx Systems branch office. No banners, no newspapers. They're just familiar faces. Marcus Reed stood up as she entered. You look tired, he said. Evelyn smiled. Tired in a good way, she replied. The meeting didn't last long. There was no discussion of the media crisis, no talk of stocks. Let's just talk about the next steps. North Sky has responded, Marcus said. They've agreed to the independent review process. Evelyn nodded. And the scholarship fund? She asked. Everything is being designed, Marcus said. Anonymously, as you requested. Evelyn leaned back in her chair. She didn't feel relieved. She felt, right. That afternoon, another email was sent internally within North Sky. Not from the leadership, but from an address that few people pay attention to. Lauren Miles. Simple title, Proposal for a New Training Program. The email is short. It's not critical. Lauren simply recounted the story. She didn't mention Evelyn's name. She didn't mention the flight, just mention one passenger who stood still even though the entire system wanted her to walk. At the end of the email, Lauren wrote a line, "We cannot fix the system if we don't dare to look at the moments when we chose convenience over fairness." The email was not answered immediately, but it wasn't deleted. That evening, Evelyn received a phone call from some strange number. "Hello," a woman's voice called out. "Are you Dr. Brooks?" "Yes," Evelyn replied. "I am Maya Thompson," the woman said. I am the one who sat in seat 1A after you declined it." Evelyn was silent for a second. "Are you all right?" Evelyn asked. "Yes," Maya said quickly, "but I didn't call about that." Evelyn waited. "I just wanted to say, Maya said I've flown a lot, but I've never seen anyone do that." "What?" Evelyn asked. "It's not something to be taken," Maya said, "but it's not something to be lost either." Maya's voice trembled. "I'm in my final year of university," she continued, "and yesterday was the first time I thought that maybe I didn't need to withdraw into myself." Evelyn closed her eyes. "Thank you for telling me," Evelyn said, "and thank you for sitting there." Maya smiled softly. "I'll remember it," she said, "not because of the chair, but because of the moment." In another corner of the city, Thomas Whitaker sat alone in his apartment. He didn't turn on the lights. There was only light from the laptop screen. A blank document is displayed on the screen. Title report. He hasn't written a single word. For many years, he had become accustomed to having other people write reports for him. This time, no one else will do it. He reopened the video. This time, he didn't turn it off. He watched it from beginning to end. He listened to his own voice. Every word now sounds completely different. No longer strong, but naked. Thomas closed his laptop. He didn't know what he would do next. But for the first time, he understood that silence was also an option. And it's not harmless. The following day, Evelyn attended a small talk at a community center. There was no large stage, just a room with about 30 chairs. She was not introduced as the CEO. It's just Evelyn. A young woman raised her hand. "How do I know when to stand up?" she asked. Evelyn thought for a moment. "When silence makes you feel small," she said. "That's when it happens." Another person asked, "But what if standing up makes things more difficult?" Evelyn smiled. Maybe she said, "But difficulty isn't always wrong." The room was silent. It's not that there aren't questions. It's because everyone is thinking about their own story. That evening, Lauren received a reply email. From the training room. Just one line. "We'd like to invite you to join our team to develop a new program." Lauren read it over and over again. She didn't shout. She didn't text anyone. She just sat there looking out the window. And smile. Evelyn stood in the hotel room closing her suitcase. She's about to leave Seattle. This trip has ended, but the story isn't there yet. She knew that some people would remember her as a CEO. She couldn't control that. But if possible, she would like to be remembered as someone who stayed. When staying wasn't easy at all. Another plane took off from Seattle early the next morning. Evelyn Brooks sat in the economy class section. Near the window, no one recognized her. And this time, it didn't tire her out. She liked the feeling of blending into the crowd. Not because she wanted to disappear, but because she knew she no longer needed to prove anything. Outside, the sky gradually turned a pale blue. The sun rose very slowly, as if learning to be patient. Evelyn closed her eyes. She thought about what had happened in just a few short days. One flight, one seat, one choice not to walk. And then the things she couldn't control started finding their own way. In Chicago, at Oryx Systems headquarters, an internal meeting is taking place. No press, no live stream. It's just that those working together are looking back at one big question. What do we want this company to represent? Marcus Reed stood at the head of the table. He didn't open his laptop. "We built RX on a foundation of precision," he said, "but now we're being seen as something else." A young engineer spoke up. "People are saying we're the company that dared to shut down the entire system for one person." The room was silent. It's not that they disagree. It's because they understand it's a new responsibility. At the same time, at North Sky Airlines Training Center, a trial class was beginning. There are no transcripts. There are no hard scripts. Lauren Miles stood before a group of new flight attendants. Her hands trembled slightly. She wasn't used to standing here, but she chose to. We're often taught how to react quickly, Lauren said. But today I want to talk about moments when speed can be damaging. She stopped. There was one passenger, Lauren continued, who stood still while everything around her seemed to want her to disappear. No one laughed. No one looked at their phone. Lauren took a deep breath. I didn't defend her from the start, Lauren said. And that's something I'll carry with me throughout my career. A young flight attendant raised her hand. So, what should we do when the system pushes us toward the easiest path, she asked. Lauren thought for a moment. We can start by believing in the tickets in other people's hands, she said, and believing that no one needs to look like a mold to deserve to be there. In another city, Maya Thompson was sitting in her school library. In front of her was an essay on leadership and public space. She paused, rereading a passage she had just written. Leadership isn't about grabbing the best seat. It's about deciding who doesn't have to stand up so others can sit down. Maya smiled. She never thought she would write that sentence before boarding that flight. Thomas Whitaker was in a law office. He sat upright, his hands resting on the table. He no longer had the demeanor of someone familiar giving orders. The opposing lawyer said, "We can manage the media. Minimize the damage." Thomas nodded. But then he said something that made the lawyer stop. "No," Thomas said. "This time, I want them to see that I'm wrong." The lawyer looked up. "Are you sure?" he asked. Thomas looked down at his hands. "I've become accustomed to always being right," he said. "And I think that's what blinded me." The lawyer said nothing further. Evelyn opened her eyes as the plane began to descend. She looked outside. The city appeared below. Another city. Another meeting awaited. The phone vibrates. A new email. Not from the press. Not from our partners. From an unfamiliar address. Title: Thank you for staying. Short content: I am a teacher. Today I told her story to my students. Not about technology, but about self-respect. Evelyn read slowly. She didn't answer. It's not that she doesn't appreciate them. It's just that she knows stories like these don't need a response. They need to continue. A few weeks later, Oryx Systems announced a new initiative. No big press conference, just a short statement. A scholarship fund. Anonymous. No founder's name is listed. For students studying fields related to systems, infrastructure, and operations. A small line at the end. Priority will be given to candidates who have previously felt like they don't belong. No one offered any further explanation. Lauren received notification that the pilot training program would be rolled out more widely. She read the email. She closed her eyes. She recalled the moment Evelyn stood in the hallway. No anger. No begging. Just stand. Lauren understood that some people change the world not with a loud voice but with an unwavering presence. One late afternoon, Evelyn sat in her office. No meetings. No urgent schedules. She looked at the old plane ticket she still kept. Seat 1A. A small piece of paper. But it revealed so much. She put it in the drawer, closed it. She doesn't need it anymore. The important thing isn't the seat itself. It's that she chose not to leave when asked. Out there, the story continues to be told. Each person tells the story in their own way. Each person takes away something different. But somewhere along the line, there's one thing that's very clear. When a person stands still, the entire system is forced to slow down. And as the system slowed down, people started seeing each other. Before the story ends, if you're listening up to this point, please take a second to like this video. Not for us, for yourself. Because if you've stayed until this moment, perhaps, you once stood in a place where no one thought you belonged. And now let the story come to a slow, steady close. 1 year after that flight, there were no elaborate celebrations, no grand ceremonies. It was just an ordinary morning in Chicago. Evelyn Brooks walked into Oryx Systems headquarters as usual. She wore a dark-colored coat, no large logos, no eye-catching accessories. The staff member greeted her. She nodded in response. No one whispered, no one looked. And that's what made her smile. In a small meeting room, a group of students were sitting and waiting. They were among the first recipients of scholarships from the anonymous fund sponsored by Oryx. No lengthy speeches, no cameras. Marcus Reed stood up. Today, he said, we don't want to talk about achievements. We want to talk about presence. He turned to Evelyn. Dr. Brooks, he said, do you have anything to say? Evelyn stood up. She looked at each young face. Their eyes were a mixture of eagerness and apprehension. She used to have that look in her eyes. I don't know how far you'll go, Evelyn said, but I know one thing. She stopped. If one day someone tells you you're in the wrong place, double-check your ticket. The room was silent. And if the ticket says you belong there, she continued, then don't walk away just because someone feels uncomfortable. No one applauded. It wasn't necessary. In another city, Lauren Miles is standing in a new training class. This time she wasn't trembling. On the board behind her was a large sign that read, "Listen before you act." Lauren told the story without mentioning anyone's name. No flights, no CEO. Just describe a moment when someone stands still and the entire system has to question itself. Our job, Lauren said, is not to protect the process. It's to protect the people within that process. A young student asked, "What if that slows things down?" Lauren smiled. "Then we should slow down," she said. "Sometimes slowing down is actually moving forward." Maya Thompson graduated from college that spring. In her farewell speech, she didn't mention her grades. She said, "I used to think leadership was about moving forward, but now I know that sometimes leadership is about knowing when to stand still." Her parents sat in the seats below. They didn't fully understand, but they saw their daughter standing tall, and that's enough. Thomas Whitaker no longer appears in the press. He hasn't disappeared. But he's no longer at the center either. He worked in a small advisory role. No great power, no privileges. One day he came across an old article about that flight. He offered no comment, no justification. He just closed the browser. There are lessons that don't need to be repeated. They need to be lived. Evelyn Brooks was sitting alone on a different flight. This time, no one looked at her. No one took her seat. She sat by the window. Outside, the ground was moving very slowly. She thought of a question she often received. If you could go back to that day, would you do things differently? Her answer was always the same. Or not. Not because of the outcome, but because if she walked away that day, she would have to carry that silence with her for the rest of her life. This story isn't about a first-class seat. It's not about who wins or who loses either. It was about a very small moment, but enough to change the course of many people's lives. A moment when someone says, "I'm not causing trouble. I just aren't disappearing." And if you're listening at this point, you might be wondering, if it were me, what would I do? No one has the answer for you. But remember this, you don't need to shout to prove you exist. Sometimes, simply staying is enough to be strong. If this story resonates with you, please share it. Who knows, somewhere out there, someone might be preparing to leave their place simply because they feel they don't deserve it. And this story might make them pause for just a second. Thank you for staying until the very end. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Have you ever been in a position where others thought you didn't belong? We'll meet again in the next story.